I need to hit you with a reality check. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 is currently the 10th most wishlisted game on Steam. I was pretty shocked to see this because I thought that most people were pretty aware that the Bloodlines 2 we're getting, it's going to be a sham. It's not going to be anything like the original Bloodlines, and what they produce, what the Chinese room is likely to give us, is unlikely to even resemble a complete game in any way, shape, or form. We've only seen 12 months out from release, some concept art. There's been 5-10 seconds of footage through the clan reveals. It's been very pathetic. It's purely combat, nothing else to really show us how these clans play. You've then got Fire with her ridiculous haircut, and yes, I know that you'll be able to play as a guy as well, but they haven't even shown that. It doesn't sound like they've even created the guy's model, and we're 12 months out. What is going on? 10th most wishlisted game on Steam, and I believe that hopefully most of those were from when the game was originally announced 5 years ago. People got excited, they wishlisted, and they forgot about it. Sadly, though, a lot of people probably pre-ordered back then. They probably pre-ordered as there was a bit of hype generated from what the Hardsuit Labs studio was doing when it seemed like things were going okay. What Hardsuit Labs showed us during their production, it looked fine. It looked like it was going somewhere. But when development moved to the Chinese room, things seem to have only gotten worse. What seems to be going on is RPG fans, people who are genuine fans of the original game, they love role-playing games, they are seeing that this new game is going to suck. However, there are some copers in the Vampire the Masquerade community. They care more about Vampire the Masquerade itself more than they care about computer role-playing games. And some of them seem okay with the fact that this game that the Chinese room is making is not going to be a genuine Bloodline sequel. It's going to be something else around this Masquerade universe. Some of them seem okay with that, but there's also a lot of casual fans who probably don't even know about the development hell that Bloodlines 2 has been in. They saw it announced, they heard it's coming out down the track, and when it does release, many of them, they've either sadly already pre-ordered, or they'll buy it when it comes out. That is what Paradox, the publisher, is hoping for, and I really don't like to see it. I hate to see bad RPGs come out because it just does damage to the genre. Even worse is when the game's bad, but it still sells pretty well because consumers are uninformed, mostly due to the publisher, the developers trying to scam them somewhat, but it basically teaches publishers that they can keep doing this. They can put something shoddy together, they can do some flashy marketing, and they'll get their money, they'll get their bag. So I do just want to make sure I'm doing everything I possibly can to make as many people as possible aware that this game is going to be a joke. And I will clarify this. If I'm wrong about this, I'll be happy. I'll be very, very pleased. But everything they're doing is suggesting that it is going to be rubbish. If it's actually good, if it's a big surprise, we unwrap the present, it's actually fantastic, they have done a horrible, horrible job of showing us that. There's so many red flags, and to keep this really simple, the most glaring fact is this. The game was in development with Hardsuit Labs. It got cancelled because they were doing a bad job. They couldn't get a full game together. And then Paradox, who'd already spent so much money on development, they took a pitch from Sumo Digital, big publisher, they've got a lot of studios, and they told Paradox that they could put something together quickly. They gave Bloodlines 2 to one of their studios, the Chinese room, and they've been cobbling this project together. Now, if they were secretly doing a good job, that would be okay. But again, we are 12 months from release, and they have not shown us anything substantial. You just have to ask yourself, why can't they show us anything more than a couple of snippets of combat in a 15-second video? Why can they only show us concept art? Why can they only show us one conversation between Fire and a Nosferatu? Where's everything else? Where's the good stuff? Where's the world? Where is a long combat encounter? Where's the UI? Where's the character building? Where is all that stuff? It does not exist. They are not hiding everything substantial. It's not there. If they had something to show us that would get us pumped, it'd be in our hands somewhat. And sure, there are games that release where they don't show everything off until 6 months from release. It's part of the marketing cycle. But Paradox, it was in their best interest to make sure we understood everything was fine after the development hell that the game went through. Despite that, they're showing us these snippets. They're making it clear they do want to present something. The Chinese room have been doing that, but it has been so shoddy. The fact that it has been so shoddy tells us that they have nothing. So we are going to go over some of what the Chinese room are doing right now with Bloodlines 2 before the big update we're supposedly going to get in January. That's going to be the real make or break moment. I think it's already broken. However, they've got at least January to try and convince us otherwise. That's when they promise there's going to be a big showcase. So I'll be waiting with bated breath. We are also going to have a look at some of these copers. People are still convinced Bloodlines 2 is going to be fantastic. I think it's important to disprove some of that. And we've got here the Chinese room's latest development diary, a dive into next-gen game development. It actually came out a couple of weeks ago, but I didn't want to cover it because it is so boring. It's basically a huge wall of text about graphics. Who really cares? But someone in the community discovered something actually quite interesting about this. And if we read just one part here, you'll see it's quite pretentious. It's overwritten. Why does it need to be this long? And here's an example of that. In the ever-evolving world of game development, staying at the cutting edge is a continuous pursuit. With the release of Unreal Engine 5, the landscape has shifted dramatically, presenting game developers with an array of groundbreaking technologies and tools. What are you talking about? This, again, is so overwritten, it's so convoluted. But then someone has worked out that if you run this through an AI detection tool, there's a 93% chance that that whole dev diary was written by AI. So these developers, it's meant to be a dev diary, meaning it's their work, it's what they care about, even more than us as consumers. They're not really giving us new information. They're just telling us how they make the game. This developer does not even care enough about their own work to write their own dev diary. They've ran it through probably ChatGPT. And I'm sure there'll be some coper who'll tell me, oh, you're looking at it pessimistically. There is a 7% chance that this person wrote it themselves. So why don't you think about that? Glass half empty for you. And then, of course, we've got these copers who still think this game is going to be fantastic. And I'm just sad to see this as the 10th most wishlisted game on Steam. It should be great titles that look genuinely fantastic. You know that the developers have passion, have care. They should be the top listed games on Steam. We saw with the day before, Jesus Christ, 200,000 people bought it. It was the most wishlisted game. And that seemed like such an obvious scam, even more than this one. Marketing just sadly always seems to win, so I feel we have to disprove some of these people who are just in denial. This person, they say, I'm convinced by Bloodlines 2, and they post the trailer here, and what they say about it is, wait, are we still worried about this game? This looks fucking baller! I especially like that right off the bat, we're getting acknowledged for our age. Fire's voice actress has a fish out of water, or Kindred out of time feeling to it. The combat looks fucking sick! My only small complaint is the facial animations could be cleaned up. Oh, see, he's not a total fanboy, he's noticed a flaw there. But we've spent years looking at Play-Doh move their mouths around, so I'm chill. The difference is the original Bloodlines has substance. The graphics might be bad, although they were fantastic for the time. The facial animations, for instance, in Bloodlines 1 are actually fantastic. Even to this day, they are quite good. But yes, sure, the graphics themselves, they might be outdated to some people, but if that's what you look for in your role-playing game, when you're looking for depth, you're looking for good systems, good characters, good development, if you really just care about the graphics, surely you can just find another genre of games that satisfies your needs. And here is someone else who is in denial. Decades-old cult classic puts anybody who makes it in the impossible hole of it has to be new, but be exactly like the old game, and ascribe to my nostalgia goggles for thousands of people with different opinions. Yes, if you are making Bloodlines 2 a sequel to the game from 20 years ago, fans of that game who you are marketing to. It's the reason you are calling this number 2. You are trying to get those people interested. They are going to have certain expectations. They are going to expect that you're expanding on that game, that you are making something true to the original. They are not expecting that you are just going to go, oh, fuck the original Bloodlines. Any fans of that, they're entitled. We're just going to make our own Vampire the Masquerade game, and who gives a fuck about the original fans? Because that is what is happening. Even if you live in a universe where you think the Bloodlines 2 we get is going to be some sort of competent game, it's not just going to be cobbled together, it is not going to be anything like the original Bloodlines. They have basically made that clear. And acting like that is an entitled point of view, it is ridiculous because they are planning to make all of their money off exploiting those old fans. If they were confident that they could just make an RPG in the Masquerade universe, call it something else like a swan song, whatever it might be, then they should do that and they should be confident in that. The problem is that they're not. They know they're not going to make the money that they're hoping for unless they exploit these old fans. And that is what the problem really is. You can't do that and then act like gamers are entitled for not accepting that. You made your bed, you have to lie in it or change the name. That's the only option. The person goes on to say, literally nothing would have made them happy. People are even bitching and complaining about what we saw of the Hardsuit Labs version of the game when it was being made by the same group of people that some could only trust the project being taken by. Yes, there was some positivity when the original developer, Brian Mitsoda, and also Chris Avallone was involved as well. When those guys were working on it, yes, there was a bit of hope, but we saw a lot of problems. Does anyone remember Cara Allison, I think her name was? She made some stupid comments. She just turned everyone off. And obviously the game was in a dire state. Even Paradox knew it, which is why they cancelled it. This person is making it out like gamers are unreasonable, they'll never be happy, when they were criticising a version of the game that was ultimately scrapped because the entire team didn't know what they were doing. Brian Mitsoda, he probably did some good work, but he was mainly the writer. It was the actual devs putting it all together who were incompetent. And don't give me this. Don't give me this idea that gamers, RPG fans can never be satisfied. How many times do I have to use Baldur's Gate 3 as an example? There are so many RPGs on Steam with very positive and upwards reviews. A lot of people on Steam who buy the games, we're not just talking about the people on message boards, they leave thumbs up on Steam. Lots of games with lots of positive reviews. Much more than negative if we're talking about mainstream RPGs that generally sell reasonably well. Many of them are well reviewed. I think even Mass Effect Andromeda, that has positive reviews on Steam. People are still buying it. So sure, some people might not be happy, but in the wider community, they still buy these RPGs, even if they're middling. People will give them a chance. What we're asking for is that you just make a game that is true to Bloodlines. If you do that, it doesn't have to be the biggest thing in the world. It doesn't have to be the scale of Baldur's Gate 3. 20, 30-hour RPG that's true to the original. It perhaps has those hub worlds, interesting gameplay, some interesting systems, exploration. I'd be okay, but I know we're not going to get that. It is going to be walking simulator. When they talk about narrative focus, it's not in an RPG sense. It's going to be totally narrow. We've seen that already from some of the dialogue options that are even more limiting than anything we saw with the Hardsuit Labs version. It's not going to be true to the original game. This person knows it, which is why they're making these excuses about, oh, you've got nostalgia goggles on, you're saying it's going to be like the old game. Yes, it does. If you want our money, you've got to give us what you've promised. And there is a good exchange here from a couple of Bloodlines fans that reinforces that idea that they're just trying to cash in on the Bloodlines name. So one person had said, I just don't even know what Bloodlines 2 has to offer me. And this Copa replies, the moment you stop wanting it to capture whatever magic the original had, you will have an answer to this question, namely a potentially good game and nothing more. Yes, but again, this is Bloodlines 2. It's what you've promised us. If you're not delivering that, you're already acting in bad faith, and I'm simply not interested on what you're doing. You're being disingenuous. You're basically scamming us to a degree. I know you couldn't go to court with that, but that is the vibe of it, and I'm going to lose all interest. Someone responds, if you don't want me to have the same expectations as Bloodlines 1, then why name the game Bloodlines 2? Please think more thoroughly. And he's absolutely right. Again, the only reason they've done this is for financial reasons, trying to cash in on the original, which is a cult classic. It's kind of funny, the original didn't even sell that well, but because it is so good, it's so highly regarded, and people have seen that over the years, you've got Paradox, the publisher, trying to ride on that. It's pathetic. And this person then responds, that same Copa, gee, why did Larian name their game Baldur's Gate 3, even though it has very little in common with that last game from 20 years ago? They must not have been thinking very thoroughly. It'll probably be a bad game. Now, I'll say this, Baldur's Gate 3, when it was first announced, people did actually have those fears. Positive reception, it wasn't really there for Baldur's Gate 3 when it was first announced. Fans of the original titles, they were very concerned it was simply going to be a Divinity reskin. They had to earn fans' respect. They had to show they were going to do right by it and produce something of quality, which they obviously did, and now fans are extremely happy. So that goes to show, if you do prove yourself, if you do right by the fans, they will handsomely reward you. If you don't do it, you are going to be laughed at and you are going to fail, which the Chinese room deserves if they do get this wrong, which is looking likely. So this example, it is stupid in a number of different ways. Baldur's Gate 3, it has plenty from the original titles, and they show just how it should be done. And this same person just makes him look like an idiot as well. They say, this is not just in very bad faith, it's also completely incorrect. There are so many nods to the original games in Baldur's Gate 3 that even I, someone who didn't play the other Baldur's Gate, kept picking up on them. And I've played the original, and yes, there are characters from the original titles who are in Baldur's Gate 3, there's many other references, and there's entirely plot lines that only exist because of the events of the previous games. That is true as well. And then this fool says, and given the information that was released so far on Bloodlines 2, you have concluded there won't be any nods or any story connections to the previous games? That isn't really the point. Basically, everything they've shown us about Bloodlines 2 shows that they don't care about the original and they're trying to do their own thing. And again, when it comes to Baldur's Gate 3, people were skeptical, but Larian turned that around very quickly when they showed they were going to do right by the originals. Chinese room have shown nothing to suggest they are going to do right by the original Bloodlines. They have to prove it. This idea that we should just naturally assume that the Chinese room are going to do right by the original game, it feels like corporate propaganda. That is the mindset that corporations, game companies want us to have, where we just mindlessly consume, do not question, even if they show no evidence that they care about the game that they're making to a sequel to. Don't worry about it. There's no proof that it's going to be bad. Therefore, you should just buy it. You should tell everyone to buy a copy. Buy the special edition. Spend the extra money. Why wouldn't you? Because there's no evidence the game's going to be bad. And just the last one on the Steam forums. This is someone who probably knows the game is going to be bad. And they say even if this game does flop, the modding community may be able to salvage it. After all, just look at all the hard work and dedication they put into improving the original Bloodlines. Decades after release, and it is still getting attention. Now, this is coping, but again, a different type of cope. They're not just a corporate bootlicker. They're hoping that the fans can maybe salvage something and we can get some good Bloodlines content. I'm just going to say it is not going to happen. When it comes to modding, it pretty much only works if the original product is great, but it just needs some tightening it up. It needs a little bit of polish. The original Bloodlines, despite all of the great work modders have done, it hasn't fundamentally changed. Basically, modders have got it working in a good state, so it's not constantly crashing. Some of those bugs, some of those fixes, they've been done as well. Some old content that was missing, but it's in the game files. Modders have restored some of that as well. You can find some of those sorts of patches online, but just the idea that you can take a horrible game, it's got no redeeming features, it's a disaster, and then fans are just going to polish that turd, it's not going to happen. If Bloodlines 2 releases, it's not going to resemble the original game. The best case scenario, sadly, is that this will be a functioning title. It'll be nothing like the original. It's going to be way limited in scope. We know there's less clans. We know they're trying to sell more to us after release despite that, which is deplorable. I've got no faith in them. January, this supposed bigger showcase, that is probably their last chance to turn this around, to get their heads together, realize that they've been going in the wrong direction, and I only see this game maybe going somewhere if they delay it beyond 2024. How it can release next year in a state that is acceptable, that is beyond me. I've had some copers try and argue otherwise, but I'm not seeing it. I've seen these disasters with other games, Kickstarter projects, RPG studios that try to promise too much but underdeliver. This title is going the exact same way. And again, I want to warn people, it should not be in the top 10 most wishlisted games on Steam. I don't want to see RPG enjoyers get scanned because I don't want to lose the goodwill that the genre has gotten after Baldur's Gate 3. I want to see more good titles come out, those that are built in good faith. So hopefully that keeps happening and no one gets fooled by Bloodlines 2. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.